Hello and welcome to Time to Be Reasonable. I'm Frank, and tonight we're running late, about 14 minutes late. Some of the reason is because I have one of my roommates has to mow the lawn at X time. That's kind of what I'm going to talk about today, um, and it'll make some sense. Uh, I want to say on the 2nd of September, a law was passed called SB 6 in Texas, or the Heartbeat Bill. And what this bill says is that you cannot have an abortion if the baby has had a heart, or if the fetus has a heartbeat. And that's checked through ultrasound, and it's also checked through the and it's also figured out through from when the mother um, last had her menstrual cycle, which is interesting in that that's not really a good scientific way of finding out. And it turns out there's a flutter that's very similar to a heartbeat, and it's hard to tell the difference. And it's not necessarily a heart, but like a developing heart or something. But according to the bill, it wouldn't really matter. And to make things more interesting, the Supreme Court ruled. Uh, they basically, what they did is they ruled against the claim on the bill that was made, but did not bring up its constitutionality in regards to Roe v. Wade. So they kind of let it stand. Uh, I wanted to discuss this today because there's a interesting amount of libertarians that are pro life, and that's fine. Um, but kind of, in my mind, the antithesis to the idea of libertarianism, because libertarians don't generally believe in slavery. I've heard that the NAP being brought up, and that you can't harm the baby, and the baby, or you can't harm. Well, in their argument, you can't harm the baby, and the baby should have rights, and therefore the other person, for some reason, has less rights, which they don't really ever go into. Um, and it seems like it would be kind of I don't know. Then it would seem like it'd be a valuative thing, and it seems like that the person that could actually make the decisions would make the decisions in that case. I don't know. I think that it's not an easy decision. I don't think it's something anybody is thinking that this is a method of birth control, or that this isn't a decision that's a serious decision. Um, but it seems like it would definitely be the person's decision that had to carry the baby. Although at the same time, uh, personally, I I do get the argument of, if a father was perfectly willing to take care of their child, um, that they might want to have some kind of say on that, and I can understand that. I would definitely want to have a say if uh, I could have a baby and the person made the decision. However, I don't really think this bill is that. This bill is much different, in that it doesn't give any kind of options. It doesn't. There is no case for rape, by the way, or sexual, or any kind of forced pregnancy, which I guess all of those categories would be rape. And therefore, it's that's the thinking on it. I feel that, uh, like I said, to me, it seems very cut and dry in that we don't believe in slavery as libertarians. But I wanted to talk about life, what life is, what it begins at, how much respect we really have for it. I find it interesting that the same people that would say that life is so very precious have absolutely no problem about calling people cucks and nerds and dorks and pussies and whatever other fun thing that they want to say. I think that that's interesting. That people that a lot of times say that they really care about life don't tend to respect people. Happens a lot. I mean, what happens after you are conceived? Or, I'm sorry, after you are birthed? What happens? Are you valuable at that point? These people don't seem to want to pay for SNAP at that point. They don't seem to want to educate these children. I mean, these are the same people that don't want to put on a mask, not because the federal government tells them to, but just because of common decency. Which is weird because it makes me wonder, like, did they cover their mouths before? Because like that's like a concern to me. It's like I always covered my mouth when I sneezed. In fact, mainly from what I've heard, is one of the reasons for the mask is because we wanted to make sure that people would actually just cover their mouth and nose when they sneezed. And think about it, that's when expellant would actually come out. But instead, we decided that we should wear masks because people don't have enough common decency to cover their mouths, and they're not willing to wear masks just to make it so that, you know, if they happen to be carrying something, that it doesn't make somebody else sick. Not being compelled, but just doing it out of a sense of not being an asshole. I've said a lot of this stuff on my Facebook page, and if you're paying attention, then you shouldn't be surprised by it. I don't think that the government should make people do things. But I do think that because of, you know, just common decency, people should be willing to do these things. And people going around and making fun of people for not doing these things don't have any value. And I'm sure somebody like, what does COVID have to do with this bill? It's so funny that you can't see it. You're sitting there saying, my body, my choice, unless it's her body and her choice. And don't get me wrong, because it goes back the other way. Because then somebody else is sitting there pointing out and saying, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. And they're like, well, you need to, you know, do this. And it's like, well, you know, my body, my choice. And there's a hypocrisy on both sides of this. Absolutely. Because if it's true, it's true. Reason would dictate that. But how do we treat people? We post memes where there's, you know, basically saying the people that put on masks are the same as people that would have a dildo on their head and walk backwards because they're just sheep. Not that they have common decency, not that they're being respectful. People say things like, well, you know, I was reading a thread, and the person was saying that, well, it's not the same thing because, if you're going to go out, then you can go out if you want to. You can stay in your house if you want to protect yourself, but if you don't, then that's not on me. It's not on me to make sure that the disease that I might have caught is not getting to you. See the logic of that? Think about that. In all cases, we would say, oh, well, that's your responsibility. In fact, it's funny. The same person was sitting there talking about how, well, if you got pregnant, then you have a responsibility, but not if you somehow ended up picking up this thing, that you have a responsibility to try and protect others from it, knowing that it exists. It's very strange if you think about it. But I am totally here to tell you that I disagree with this bill. One, I disagree with it just because of the fact that it's not constitutional. Well, it's not. I should say it doesn't work with the precedents that have been set up by the Constitution thus far because it goes against Roe v. Wade. If you're going to overturn Roe v. Wade, then overturn Roe v. Wade. But, there's a lot of people that would prefer that you not do that. I'm here to say that I think very strongly that you cannot, or at least you have to own the fact that you can't sit there and say that you're someone who believes in liberty for people and enslaving other people. And that's what you're doing because you're saying, I'm going to tell this person what to do. And don't tell me that's not authoritarian because it is. You can be comfortable with that. You can say, yeah, that's true. Okay, cool. That's true. Fine. Go find yourself somewhere else to be because you're not libertarian. Unless you want to explain to me. You can talk about the NAP principle, but the reality is the NAP principle, which is a principle of not harming other people, is not something that it's basically you have two different individuals. And one can't have a court case. So I don't know. And I'm willing to have somebody on here and explain it to me. Not yell, not say, and this is why you're wrong, because I'll just eject them right out of this show. But if you want to come and you want to explain to me why this is a reasonable conclusion to come to as a libertarian, be happy to listen. I will say that Ayn Rand believed in pro-choice. And I will say that a lot of the belief systems that I've ever heard that were libertarian were not exactly fundamentalist Christian views. But I know that some of you are fundamentalist and Christian and believe in the right to life and are calling yourself libertarians. And while you might think that, well, because I'm part of this organization and because I'm able to, say that this is my party if I take it over, and therefore then I am a libertarian regardless of what I was before, that may be true. I guess if I wanted to go and have a wrestling caucus and bring it into the Libertarian Party, I could do that. But none of those people would really be libertarians as much as just wrestling fans. One thing in this program that I would like to ask people to do is to be honest, forthright, and fair in their dealings. Because that's the one thing I will say is that this particular belief system was brought to me by my dad, and so therefore I consider it a combination of the way in which he carried himself his entire life, which was to respect people in his dealings, to be honest, forthright, and to do things in a non-hypocritical way. You know, he was someone when I was a associated student senator, and I was thinking I was going to make a deal, and I told him what the deal was and everything, and I didn't think of it as that big of a deal, and it was just a favor for a favor because that's how politics worked. And he said that's not the kind of person you should be, and you shouldn't be doing favors for favors. So when I hear principled, that's what I think of. I think of honesty. I think of being forthright. I think of being open. I think of telling the truth, not omitting things, transparency. Mind you, some of those things bit me recently, but that's another issue. I am surprised by the way in which, and not to call people out of their name. That's part of it too. And not to monster, that's right. Not to demonize people. Just because you don't like what they have to say, saying that suddenly they're a cuck or they're this or that, they're that. And let me clear this up. And I know that Facebook is not going to let me monetize this episode. But let me tell you something. When you use the term cuck, to cuckold somebody is a type of sexual deviancy. I don't know where it comes from specifically, but where you are willing to let somebody else service your wife while you watch. And I think that word has no business in politics at all. I think calling people names like that is immature and worthless. And I think if you engage in it, that you're pretty much a bad person. So be a good person and stop it. Stop putting out memes that demean people. Stop running mudslinging type campaigns. Respecting people is always good, especially if you respect life. How can you respect life and not respect people? How can you respect life and not want to give some kind of program? Okay, fine, we're libertarian, so I'm not saying we necessarily want to start a welfare state, but it seems to me that wanting to put something somewhere for these children that you want to exist would make sense. Having something. Because the idea of it's like, no, you should have this kid. Okay, cool. Well, how am I going to raise this kid? Not my problem. I'm just making the decision for you to have the kid. I don't have to make the decision so that you can actually, so that you can actually, raise the kid and make sure that the kid becomes a forthright adult. That's not my problem at all. I just have to make sure that you have that baby that's so valuable until it gets out here, and then it's on its own. Then it can go be adopted or something else can happen to it. Not my problem. Makes no sense. And if you're doing those things, if you're like, I believe this, and in fact, I I donate to adoption centers, and I help, with the, community outreach services for, children. I donate to food banks. I do these things. Then great, awesome. And then maybe what you should do is you should go to women and administer to them. Go to, women that you think might be thinking that they have to have no choice about having an abortion, and you should go and you should talk to them and see if they're interested. Well, first, if they're interested in talking to you, but you as an individual should do that, because you're not going to use the state to make that happen, right? Because we don't support the state. So the state shouldn't be involved. We all agree on that. So then there should be no, it shouldn't be on the books. It should be, something that is a thing that, happens, but is not on the books in any way, shape, or form. And I understand that, a lot of women would want the protections of not having that taken away from them. And that's understandable. And that's the problem, though, because sometimes when things are on the books, then they were given to you so they can be taken away. Where something's a natural right, it's your right. And it's a difficult situation. It's like, how do you do that? And like, so far, the only way we've figured out how to defend our natural rights is through force. I'm not going to say that if you want to protect your body, then you just need to get a gun, and then we won't say anything about it. I don't know, maybe that does work in some ways, because then it's like, if somebody's like, hey, you've got to do this and that with your body, and then you'd be totally within your rights to just gun them down because they're trying to make you do something. I mean, consider this. If somebody comes into your house to take you away in a black van, then you have the right to defend yourself. And if somebody is going to tell you what to do with your body, then you have the right to defend yourself. And like I said, I still don't understand exactly where the father comes in, except for hopefully that the father would be able to say something. But most laws right now say that, the woman doesn't have any responsibility to tell the father that that they have a child. And that's the same issue, though, because then it's like, okay, but then we also have, I'm trying to think of it. I'm sorry. You have the money that you have to pay child support. We have child support. But you weren't part of that decision, but you still might have to pay child support for the child, even though you weren't part of that decision. Now, if you were part of that decision, then paying child support makes total sense, because if you said, hey, I think you should do this, then that means that you need to be in that child's life. And obviously, if you're the only one that wants to do this, then you definitely need to have all the things that you need to raise a child. But the state shouldn't be involved. That's my thoughts on that. And I wanted to take the time and discuss this and discuss the different thoughts on it and my thoughts on it. I know it's heavy-handed. I understand that. And like I said, I'll listen to people if they want to talk to me. Not talk at me, but talk to me. Because right now I'm trying to not talk at people. I'm trying to talk to them. I'm trying to say that here's the things. I mean, yes, I am just very dismissive about the harshness that's on Facebook and other places where there's memes that are just set specifically to demean people. And I've gone in on this before, specifically about COVID, where I am somebody who is immunocompromised, and I'm like, hey, I would love to come out to some events, but I know for a fact, it's like, here's the thing. Okay, let's say we're not talking about libertarians. Let's say we're talking about the the Los Angeles Orchestra, and I want to go and I want to be part of the orchestra, but I am immunocompromised. And I know that the orchestra has put up notes that has said we will not mask under any circumstances, and we aren't going to take the vaccine, and also, we're going to be right up on you. Well, let's take it differently. Let's say that I don't like garlic, and the organization has said we're going to eat garlic openly, and we're going to be right up in your face, and if you don't like it, tough. That's fine, but then I'm not going to be involved because I don't like garlic, or let's say I'm allergic to garlic in this case. Whereas it should be like, oh, well, you're someone that wants to help out with the organization. Maybe we could have a little bit of boundaries with you. Like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to wear a mask, but I'm totally willing to, not be up on you. We'll give you some distance. We'll give you a little space to be, and then we'll talk. If we need to talk to you, we'll talk to you, whatever. Something like that. But that was not an option. And when I went and I said that, because someone said, why aren't you involved in your party right now? And I told them, I got the laughing emoji, which, by the way, is a big thing now because it's oh so funny. People are very concerned about this. They're like, I'm concerned about this. I'm trying to do this. And it's like anything that you have a real concern of, they just make a joke out of because they think you're a joke, because they have no respect for you. Because people who do that, they clearly have no respect for you because you're sitting there making a point and they're just laughing about it. Even though you made a perfectly good point, it's just that it doesn't matter what you say, they're not going to change their mind. And that's something that, it's not like I think that the people that I'm kind of talking about right now are going to watch this and go, oh, I see, Frank. That makes so much sense. I'm going to stop being this way. They're not. Probably not going to watch this. Probably not going to pay any attention to it. Probably just going to keep on doing what they're doing and have absolutely no respect for other people. Except for their kind of people. And that's an issue too, but not one that I want to talk about today. But yeah, that's my thoughts on life and how we treat other people. And you can get in touch with me right here on Time to Be Reasonable. We have a email, I think. Or coderedgames@gmail.com is always an access for me. And you can help us out by going on to tpublic.com/stores/gamingfix. That's gaming -FIXX. And thank you, everybody, and good night. And I hope it wasn't too preachy. But like I said, if you want to say something, if you have things to say, feel free to reach out. Good night.